Ozzie, can you fast forward a year past the uncapped year and how you plan for this? You have a situation where you guys can keep X amount of restricted free agents. In the past, you probably wouldn't be able to do that because of the cap. So what will happen, assuming that if you go to an uncapped year, you go back to a cap after that, how does it impact your plans to be able to keep your players, but then not get in the situation if you get back to a cap where you put yourself in cap jail? Is there anything that you have to worry about in that regard moving forward after this capped year, uncapped year?
Yes, it is, and that's a good question. And we probably spent maybe 2 hours just dealing with those issues yesterday with our group, of dealing with the restricted guys, which we're kind of at the advantage with, but those guys can eventually become unrestricted, and how to deal with it. But I think what we've seen in the past, and this is where personnel, cap accounting, a good owner, and a good coach all coming together, is that we can't be afraid to let Bart Scott walk out of the door and hope that Tavares Gooden, Ellerby or McClain can replace him. I mean, we can't be afraid of that. But we also have to be smart enough to know that there is going to be some opportunities that we can extend some guys and take them out of the restricted, out of the unrestricted game, and we can have them for 4 or 5 years. That's a balance that we are going to be dealing with over the course of the next 4 or 5 months, because if we get a deal done, then it's going to impact like 200-something players of that. Like Steve said, we got 10 of them. And we got to be prepared to be able to extend some, or to be able to say, okay, we might have to let this one go because we got a young player that's got to step in and play. So we're playing that game in our mind right now. Like I keep saying, other than losing on Sunday, I have a fun job. But that makes our job fun, to sit there and do what we did yesterday for a couple of hours to talk about today and tomorrow. And that's why we have to do it. But you can only do it when you have a head coach that's in the game with you.
And I'll say, if we're going from an uncapped year back into a capped situation in 2011, then it's the league's responsibility to make sure that the teams have a soft landing, and that you know that will be the last major negotiating point, I guess, is exactly how the rosters are affected in that transition back into a cap. And you know, they could restrict movement for a while to give you exclusive rights for 1 more year, or stagger them depending on who lost the most if there was indeed a lockout year of 11. But for the most part, if we go into a capped year, the league is already aware that things that we do to protect ourselves now will not come back and haunt us when we hit the ground running them with a new cap.
Steve, what did you like most about this team this year? What drove you crazy? What was frustrating to you in watching the team?
You know, as an owner, you would love your team to be the least penalized team in the league. I'm certainly not happy about it. I'm not gonna lie to you, because it's opportunities, and you see the flow of the game stop because of penalties. I don't think it's just yards. It's trying to make these young guys understand that, you know, springing a guy for a 50-yard punt return by blocking some guy in the back, you know, is not worth it. And you know, we've got to address it. And John and Ozzie and Dick and I, you know, we've talked about it. And that's something that, if you looked at the end of the year, I think 10 of the top 14 penalized teams, I think, were 10 of the 12 playoff teams. So there really isn't a correlation between penalties or lack of penalties and success, but specific penalties and specific times of the game, yeah, some of it's weeding out some players that refuse to practice their technique and find themselves in those positions. And I'd be the happiest guy in the world if we were 15th in the league in penalties. But we play an aggressive style of defense, and I really don't anticipate, nor do I care if we're ever the least penalized team. But I certainly hope we're not one of the top penalized teams. That goes without saying.
All right. Guys, thank you very much.